So we will get started very shortly. As you can see in front of you as you enter the room, there's our little display of corporate partners and partners, those people who continue to support us throughout this. ARC360 was initially never designed to be kind of a webinar series. It was always about events, but things change. And those guys who you can see in front of you are those people who continue to support us throughout this. And for that, we're most appreciative. Again, industry-wise, great to hear all the feedback that I receive on a weekly basis in terms of the webinars, the support, the possible things we could do better. Any feedback is most welcome. So please do keep that coming in our way. All right, and as per usual, again, little disclaimer that I always like to pop up before we get too involved in the webinars. Again, just as a case of we know how quickly things are changing at the current moment. So just want to put it out there. Those who can obviously see it can read it for themselves, but anyone tuning in on the phones, the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributor and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. As always, please respect all contributions, and we encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions available. So welcome on board, everybody, and great to see everyone here. Now the panelists were vouch. I've just had a last-minute panic session where my internet dropped out completely. So you had the three panelists who were just about to take over, and I've just jumped back in at the 11th hour there. So hopefully we've got a good connection and all will go according to plan. Fingers crossed, anyway. So again, just put things in context in terms of our webinar series. We're here to obviously focus on what's happening within our own sector. You know, aside from obviously what's going on within our world, you know, this is a far greater thing that's happening out there in terms of, you know, the global world. The pandemic itself obviously is a health and well-being is the primary concern of anything at the moment. But what has started as a kind of humanitarian crisis has now evolved into a global economic emergency. We're faced with challenges like any other industry. And as we go over the weeks, we've obviously discussed what's been happening and kind of, you know, monitored the situation. And we're now at a point where obviously things are starting to turn as well. In terms of potential volume increases, potentially people going back to work. So lots going on in the industry right now. It follows on obviously from the announcement of the weekend in terms of the easing of restrictions, or certainly changes to restrictions. Again, we'll obviously touch upon that. Last week we had quite a lively debate and touched upon a kind of Cobra style committee in terms of how the industry might collaborate a little bit better, or at least certainly start those discussions. So that's something we'll perhaps touch upon. And obviously we've got various re-emergence, if you like, challenges and issues that we just need to be very aware of and that we'll discuss today. So joining us today is Rob Harper, Head of Claims Business Performance at Admiral Insurance. We've got Dave Sargent, Managing Director of Gemini ARC and Chairman of AutoRaise. And we've got Kevin Thompson, Commercial Manager of CAPS and Chairperson of the SMMT Vehicle Manufacturer Body Repair Working Group. So thank you very much for joining us today, guys. And what we're going to do, a little bit different today, because Kevin and CAPS have got some data insights, in fact, that they're keen to share with us. And I think this is a really good tool as we start to work our way, if you like, re-emerge as a sector. And what we'll do is I will kind of hand the reins over to Kevin in a second and just let him talk us through what we've got. So hopefully on a weekly basis, we'll now start tracking this. But Kevin, if I can hand over to you.
Sure. Afternoon, Mark. Afternoon, everybody. As everybody knows, I'm Commercial Manager for CAPS, stands for the Common Automotive Platform Standard. If you can just move on, Mark. We currently register or have registered to use CAPS just over 1,200 body shops. As well, in part of the community, there's 65 companies that consume the CAPS data, which includes insurer work providers, claims companies, parts, mobility, and system providers. On an annual basis, we actually exchange 1.7 million claims per annum. And as most of you know, we're also led by our Industry National Advisory Council. One of the things that always astounds me with CAPS is that everybody sees this invisible conduit pipe that moves secure data from your management system if you're a body shop to your claim system if you're an insurer. The one thing I didn't realize is that actually CAPS performs over 1 million operations per day in moving messages, moving claims data. So it's a sizable amount of effort and work that goes on in the background. And one of the benefits to exchanging all of this data is that we're able to show the industry what that data looks like, especially when we took a snapshot from the beginning of February. If you can just move on, Mark. We took a dip test, if you like, 14th of February, and what we've done is we've tracked that through weekly claims exchange. This graph here shows unique single claims, and what we class as a unique single claim is a claim that's been initiated within CAPS. So whether that's a claim that's been created by an insurer work provider and put into CAPS for deployment, or whether that's a body shop that's created a job on their management system and has exchanged that with a work provider insurer. So in effect, it's that single claim that's happened. Now, what you can see through the lockdown period in the red boxes is that we started to see a drop from week ending 13th of the 3rd, where there was a slight peak, and then it steadily dropped as body shops have started to close. There was a bit of a flat line week ending 27th of March. Bearing in mind the lockdown started on the 23rd, and then we've seen a steady decline where we see the trough or the bottom of the dip at the 25% week ending 17th of the 4th. Now what we've started to see from that point going forward is a steady increase all the way up to last Friday's data, which now shows 39%. And if I could just ask you to move on, Mark, to the next slide. This next slide shows the supply chain transmission. So this is in effect the previous slide, unique claim, where a single claim is then being exchanged with multiple supply chain members. So this could be a parts company, could be mobility, could be additional systems. But in effect, where you saw the peak at the end of the 13th, where it was 111% on unique claims, we've suddenly seen a drop down to 102%. So this could be a sign that people were starting to take in claims, but actually not generate estimates and therefore not generate parts requests, etc., etc. And again, we're trying not to assume, we're trying to just let the data speak for itself. But you can clearly see that the supply chain transmissions have very much tracked the unique claims on a variance of 1 to 2% as we move through to Friday last week. Now, one of the things that I wanted to stress was that as we've seen that increase start from the week ending 17th of the 4th, this doesn't necessarily represent that vehicles are starting to be repaired. In fact, what we've seen over the last week through communication with body shops is that a lot of the shops have closed or they furloughed their staff. And what we're now seeing is business owners, managing directors are actually going into their body shop management systems from remote access, accepting these claims, and then even contacting the customers themselves to triage the customer as opposed to, is the vehicle mobile or is it not mobile? And do they want to submit the vehicle for repair or do they want to wait? So whilst the graph starts to go up, this is merely an indication that claims are starting to be being accepted. And I'll hand back over to you, Mark.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much indeed for that. And as I say, hopefully, CAPS will support us on a weekly basis. We'll continue to track that, and I'm sure the sort of evidence and the information behind it will become clearer over the weeks. Dave, now Gemini ARC, you took this decision to effectively kind of shut down business, didn't you? And you've tackled things from that sense. So can you talk us a little bit through about your kind of voyage over the last few weeks?
Yeah, voyage is the right word, I think. I've seen this really as we're on a big cruise ship, and we hit a rock and put a hole in the side of the boat, and we had to put everyone in the lifeboats and get them off and get them to safety, and then a small cruise patched the boat back up, and now we're bringing everyone back on board. We didn't close as per se, but certainly the workshop side of the business, we decided to cease work to protect the staff. We want to make sure all the staff, and we were 100% in place and compliant with social distancing, etc. At that time. So the back end of March, we saw it coming quite soon. Part suppliers just turned off. Fortunately, the model that we ran, we only have cars on site that we've got parts for, etc. We were able to finish our work in progress, not leave anyone, wanting. Communicate with all our insurer partners what we were going to do, and then effectively we moved all the head office staff to home working, so all the claims team continued from home. So did the finance team, so the business could still run. Furloughed basically everyone else. So I think out of our 700 staff, we had about 680 furloughed at that back end of March, and then ran the business like that on Zoom calls every morning and continued to keep talking. What our plan was, obviously we got business continuity plans, but nothing in there for a pandemic and no volume. It wasn't something we thought we were ever going to face, but this is what we faced. And we've had to continue over the last 3 or 4 weeks working on a reset button and a recovery plan, how we come back. And protecting the business obviously is first and foremost. We want to be there at the end of this, whenever the end of this is, or if there is ever an end. We want to continue being in business, and protecting our staff and keeping as many of our staff as we possibly can, and making sure we're still providing that service that we were pre-pandemic going forward. So the last 3 or 4 weeks we put our toe in the water with one site. Tested we could get parts still, tested we could social distance. We made sure all our measures are in place now at every site, perspex screens, posters, everything that we need to do to protect ourselves and protect our customers is in place. Once we were confident we'd got that in place and the volume had steadied, as it were, we couldn't come back full speed, and it would be a disaster to do that. You'd run out of work very quickly. Within 2 weeks you'd probably have no work again, and we don't know what's going to happen with the government easing restrictions. You don't know if we're going to have a spike again and we're going to be locked down again, so we've got to be very, very cautious, I think, in our approach to returning. So we adopted a skeleton staff, three people at each site, to come back, and we've approached that, and we've got up to, on Monday we will have 21 of our 29 sites back open in skeleton format, repairing 2 or 3 cars each a day. So we're a long way short of our usual volume. We were doing 350 claims a day. Now went to 35 at the worst point. So it's a dramatic drop. But I think we made the right decision. It's important not to not make a decision. I guess to procrastinate and wait is not the plan. I think you just got to make a decision, whether it's got to be right for your business. Everyone's business is different. Insurers, suppliers, everyone's got to protect their business first and foremost, protect their staff, and then make a forward plan out of it. And I think we've got that in place now to move forward as volume steadies or maintains what it is. I don't expect it to go shooting back up, and I really don't think we're planning for more than 70% volume again the rest of this year. And then I think we're going to have the biggest recession we've ever seen in our lives the next few years. So again, we've got another challenge coming. I don't want to be doom and gloom because I'm not that type of person, but that's what we've got to prepare for. And maybe that Cobra style meeting is planning for what it won't be a new norm. It's whatever is coming next and what it builds to and what it becomes. And each business can look at itself now really, and is going to have to make some drastic cuts and decisions and that to make the model sustainable going forward. And every business will have to do that, insurers alike, sending everyone home. Is that what they're going to continue to do going forward? Will they, let some of their offices go, etc.? There's loads of opportunities, I think, for every business now, to just reset and say, this is what we're going to do going forward.
Okay, well, we'll come back to the kind of nitty gritty of all of that, and also kind of link it in with obviously Kevin's numbers, because we're kind of, a lot of the discussion in recent weeks has been about kind of false starts in terms of, claims, clearing up what work in progress there is, and almost, kind of people thinking that there's enough work to go around, but then obviously as more body shops open, again, that's going to level off, etc. So we'll come back to that. But just coming on to you, Rob. In terms of, again, insurers, we've heard kind of a week by week progress report from various insurers, but just give us a little insight into your world really in the last few weeks.
Sure. Yeah, last few weeks. So it seems like some time ago, at the beginning of March, I was actually out of the UK and returned to be sent straight into a crisis management room. Because what we'd heard of prior to that, the reports that had come out from Southeast Asia of a virus that had hit that part of the world, was actually obviously clearly spreading across Europe and the Western world as well. So there's that point in time that it became obvious to us and the country at large that it was a pandemic, it was a global pandemic, and that we had to prepare ourselves operationally to deal with that. That, of course, meant that we had to engage with our IT department, who have undertaken a mammoth effort in terms of being able to get several hundred people who were able to work from home at the start of this crisis, right through now to several thousand. And that has allowed us to more than keep the lights on operationally. It's been allowed us to be able to service the customer in the ways that they expect us to do so, and also allowed us then to gradually move into a new BAU environment. We're all getting used to Zoom calls. We're all getting used to Microsoft Teams calls to actually run the business. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, what the past few weeks have been. If I sort of fast forward to actually what the focus has been very much in the last 7 days, obviously we've been watching with interest, intently, in terms of key announcements that we received at the weekend, firstly from Welsh Assembly Government, and then I was going to say UK Government, but where lockdown is concerned, of course, Boris speaks for England, because both of those things affect Admiral in different ways. Firstly, Welsh Assembly Government obviously create the lockdown rules and the criteria that is implemented and executed in Wales. That affects us operationally and our ability to transition people back to work or not, as the case may be. And obviously, as we know, what has been created is different rules in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland compared to England. And then, of course, what happens in England, because that has a direct impact and correlation in terms of frequency. That's why the bulk of the claims occurs. So we were watching those things intently, and of course the Chancellor's announcement in the past day or two with regards to the JRS and obviously what has transpired to become the extension of that. So we're watching those things intently. The drive for us operationally is still to get everybody that can working from home. We're not far off that now. Obviously we've had to prioritise customer-facing staff in the main. Initially, but we're pretty much there now in terms of being able to run the business, and as I said, now adapt into that new BAU world that we sort of live in. In terms of volumes, we saw an almost instant decrease in new claims volumes post 23rd of March, and from the period 23rd of March to Easter weekend, we had frequency running at about 25% of expected volumes. After the Easter weekend, that ticked up So we were starting to see that volume closer to 30%. And this week, following the weekend's announcement, we started to see that tick up by another 2 to 3 percentage points. So we are starting to see that gradual increase in volume. It is largely guesswork in terms of where frequency will get to. We internally at the moment are working on a number of models to feed into our operational plan as well. I'm sort of with Dave at a personal level. I'd sort of expect frequency to be in the sort of 80% range there or thereabouts, potentially by the end of the year. That is largely guesswork, and none of us really know as well. So, frequency absolutely has been hit, of course. And in addition to that, we've also had to respond to some pressure from the regulator. Actually, the expectations of our customers and what we need to do to respond to that. That's really important. I suppose tap into our more philanthropic and charitable tendencies to support local charities as well. I think that's really important. How we support our staff, of course, is also vitally important as well through these times. Working from home and the lockdown has affected different people in different ways, whether that is because you're really busy because you've been working flat out non-stop for a number of weeks now, or because you're not working at all. And actually, it's how we support those two groups of staff, and there's obviously a lot in between as well. So that's also been an important part for us, and of course, how we support the supply chain as well, which is a key important piece for us as well. So it's been a very, very busy period for us, notwithstanding the reduction in claims. As I said, a lot of planning has gone into this as well. But this doesn't stop. This is going to continue for some time.
Fabulous stuff, great stuff, great insights for all round in terms of the businesses. Now, I suppose drilling down into the detail then, so from the CAPS numbers that we see, a kind of, if you like, almost a partial spike before we went into, a deep decline, gradually seemingly working our way out of that in terms of notifications. Are we kind of, is this almost like a false start? Are we kind of thinking there's more work out there than there currently is, and kind of what are the challenges, I suppose, as body shops start to perhaps increase their own availability or intake of work, or bring staff back in off furlough? Dave, can you touch upon that for us?
Yeah, well, it's a difficult one to say with the what the government have said. Whether the infection rate's going to go back up again. That's the biggest worry that none of us can control. If that happens, obviously we're diving back undercover again, aren't we? So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we maintain, the current run rate, and it stays like it is, so we can start to build a bit of a plan on that then. Certainly for us, bringing staff back, as well as we look site by site, apprentices were the first on my team sheet on each site, because they're multi-skilled. They're 3 years into their program. We brought those back straight away, so apprentices are straight back in. Also, young people about the place rather than older people is obviously better for them and health-wise for the older members of staff. So we made sure we've brought the apprentices back, but it is all dependent on what happens with the infection. I think if it stays as it is, and the volume continues on the plane that it is, we can readapt the business and readapt the model to suit. But there are going to have to be changes, and I'm not saying specifically, the insurer's got to pay for this and suppliers got to pay for this. I think all of the businesses need to look at each other and say, where do we overlap? Where are the inefficiencies? From Kevin's point of view with the IT, us working from home has been quite easy and quite straightforward. The phone still rings as if it's head office. If claims can be automated by our insurer partners, another saving. All these things need to be, that have been on the back burner for a while, need to be brought forward to help us move forward with IT benefits and different ways of working for us. But we all need to work together on that. Mm-hmm. But I think just asking for more money from Rob or whoever to pay for the loss isn't the answer. I'm sure Rob wants to hear that, and body shops don't want to hear that. But I think, what we found is there's a lot of standing cost. So while your business is closed effectively, or just running this skeleton staff, you have a lot of standing costs that you've got your rent and rates, etc. But you've got courtesy cars sat there that aren't being utilised, or you've got out-of-text bill, that sort of thing, that are still there. They're there. So what can we do in the future to support those costs? What can be done with those costs? What should be done in those areas that we haven't got standing costs? The same as us as a business, supplying managers, company cars. They're all sat on their drives, aren't they? At the moment, unusable, but you're still paying the lease on them. It's things like that that we all need to look at and say, okay, well, what should we do in the business going forward to mitigate some of these costs that we've just accepted as a natural part of doing business, really? Insurers paying for a valet, etc., for cleaning the car, that's all well and good and great, but there's not enough volume anyway at the moment. But how are we protecting that customer? So if a customer does get ill, have we cleaned the car properly? Who's the liability comes back to the body shop, unfortunately, which obviously we don't want. It needs to be a shared position, coronavirus does, that we're all protecting each other and all reducing all the inefficiencies and all the clunky bits that are still in the chain and have been forever. This hopefully will be the catalyst to have proper talks and say, okay, what can we do, guys? The insurers need us and we need the insurers. It's two-way. The insurers don't want all the body shops to go bump, and neither do we not want the work from the insurers. So we're both in this together. It is a marriage, and we need to find that common ground that keeps us in business. As say, a recession's coming. We've been through recessions before. We all have, haven't we? You can't beat a good recession, some people would say. But we've got to find our way through that, and we need to find some more opportunities and ways to fix it, really.
Yeah, definitely. Now Rob, I'll come back to you because Dave said he's not going to ask you for any more money, which is a good thing. So that should have put a smile on your face. But in terms of challenges as volumes pick up, as body shops start to kind of switch back on in terms of your own network, what challenges as an insurer presented with as that starts to happen, as body shops perhaps start coming and telling you, right, we're open for business? Are we back to kind of business as normal? How do the whole kind of relationship there work in terms of volumes and filling those shops up, etc.?
Well, we've been seeing that type of contact steadily now for a number of weeks as body shops are I suppose reversing original decisions to close furlough staff and reopen again. Obviously, we go through a process which is sort of natural and understandable of understanding what is the work in progress we work like at that particular body shop, and what capacity they have to deal with that, and obviously then take back their postcodes. But where that's feasible, where that's practical, obviously we'll do what we can to ensure that happens. And that's obviously the support that we would give the repairer at that level. Of course, there is the challenge, just don't have the volume that I once did to give the repairer. And I've already reeled off some of the numbers that we've seen in terms of the drop in new claim frequency. Claims aren't there at the moment, so that is obviously clearly going to be an ongoing challenge, because the claims aren't there. Even though we will start to see, albeit slowly, gradually, an increase in that volume come through as roads start to get busier, as more people start to get on the road, take the car to work instead of public transport. More factories and businesses start to reopen after this weekend's announcement. More people drive to the beach or the countryside, because actually in England you're allowed to do that now. So that becomes interesting, whether the weekend actually becomes your busiest time and becomes the new commute. I mean, we might actually see a sort of shift in the distribution of when claims are reported, but that's a separate topic, I guess. But yeah, it's all about working with repairers as much as possible to reassign postcodes where maybe they had to be reallocated because repairers had closed for this period of time. But we have a challenge, which is volume, and that is the problem for us at the moment.
Okay. Now, Kevin, I'll come to you, and it's kind of I suppose a subject or a question I posed a couple of weeks ago in terms of types of repair that we are potentially now seeing. The volume's changed significantly. We all know that, but is there any evidence that the repair type has changed that you see from CAPS or can see from CAPS?
Well, ironically, as part of our security process and what we do on a daily basis with CAPS, we don't actually see the data that's being exchanged. All that we can see is that there's been a claim exchanged between two parties. We set out at the very beginning that the data that we actually exchanged was not going to be stored, and therefore it's in the interests of those two parties that want to connect together to be able to share that information, not for us to store it or to do anything else with that data. So the data that we've provided today is very much point A to point B or point A to C, D, and E. Okay.
Have you seen any?
Sorry, just on that point, there's
Yeah.
definitely some evidence our end anyway in terms of a slight shift in the type of accident that we've actually seen. We've seen less multi-vehicle accidents for obvious reasons, because the density of traffic isn't as you'd expect through normal times. We've also potentially seen a shift in the driver demographic as well, less young drivers on the road as well. We still started to see that wash through. So we are seeing a shift in the claims mix for sure, and at a repair level, a slight change in the repair, more sort of towards the cosmetic end, I guess. That's certainly what the signs are our end anyway.
Okay. Reflected from yourself, Dave, the workload you're starting to see or have seen?
Yeah. In mobiles, overtook mobiles by a long way. Well, with claims frequency as well, the mobile claims that came towards us seem to increase dramatically as the volume dropped off. That seems to have steadied now and gone back up the other way. So, I think, as Rob said, people's way of going out or going anywhere has changed dramatically. There's more people physically exercising, walking, running, cycling. Will that continue? Will people go on motorbikes? The government said don't use public transport. Is that going to make a difference? They don't want rush hours anymore. We may have to adopt shift times to social distance in the shops as well. So I think there's so many parameters that are going to change and have already changed. It will be a bit of a different landscape, I think, when we come back.
Fair enough. And in terms of obviously the roadmap, if you like, from the weekend, again, this is kind of crystal balling and stuff, but how does that assist in terms of planning as we kind of re-emerge, or is it still very much kind of finger in the air type stuff and let's see what happens? How are you using that to the advantage of your business, and how can you align that, I suppose, with your activity? Kevin, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, I think it echoes what Dave says. There's a lot of variables that are at play here. As government advice says, don't use public transport. If you need some form of transport, you've got options. You're either going to go into shared mobility, you're going to go into car club. The fact that you can walk, cycle, swim to work, that's all doable as long as you live within the locale. But clearly, if you live outside London, as an example, and you need to get to work, it's very difficult to avoid public transport because you don't want to pay the congestion charge. You probably don't have a car today, therefore you've got to go out and expense that car. And then you've got the added challenge of being able to park it whilst you're in your place of business. So I think when we talk about claims going up or down, I think it is going to be a variable. The risk parameters are going to change because you've got people that didn't used to drive cars that are suddenly on the road driving cars. I think from our perspective in the CAPS world, because the exchange is automated, we're not really going to see any difference. Clearly, we're going to see a drop in claims, but the exchange itself is automated, so we'll continue to do that. one of the things that we have seen, which is quite significant, our business development side of the business has increased tenfold, because I think as people and businesses have either been closed or they've been furloughed or they're having to work from home, it's put a lot more emphasis on their digital strategies. And so we've had a lot more people coming to us either requesting to connect to additional services in CAPS or want to come to us to connect to CAPS because they want to further develop that digital strategy, which is a clear indication that actually a lot of people are not just going to rush back to their offices and start working side by side with their colleagues. They want to continue to run their business and actually keep the social distancing, but also do it from a remote perspective as well, if they can do.
Yeah, and similar to, question to yourself, and really, Rob, and in terms of kind of the roadmap, and I suppose as you've already sort of stated, you're working across slightly different geographies and different sort of plans or maps as they're going forward. But how does that kind of help in terms of planning, claims distribution, or notifications, and this kind of thing?
Well, operationally, as I said, we're largely covered and have been for quite some time, and obviously our ability to work remotely and from home has really assisted that. In terms of roadmap and frequency effects and what may happen, as the guys have already touched on, we are going to see more people that are able to work from home and will continue to work from home, I would think, for the majority of this year. More not working because of the extension of the government JRS and furlough scheme. And unfortunately, there will be, as we move into recession, more people unemployed. But then we'll have more people travelling to work by car and not using public transport, more people driving to do exercise, and more people, I think, becoming lockdown fatigue generally and actually just going on non-essential trips. So it's just where each of those things and each of those sort of competing elements gets to and lands in terms of an overall frequency as we sort of move out of this period and post sort of lockdown, whenever that may be. I think by most people's estimation, there is a certain amount of guesswork in this, we won't reach pre-COVID levels this year, but we'll probably be in that sort of 80 to 90, but probably at the lower end of that range by the end of the year. So obviously that's going to have an impact on the industry. It was budgeting for, and it was expecting a certain volume to be received this year, and that volume may not be there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, type of accident as well, in terms of obviously all the areas that you've just discussed. The rush hour might not be a thing anymore, and therefore, completely changing the profile of what we potentially see. Yes, Dave. Sorry, Ken.
I was just going to say, with the government announcement yesterday about furlough, it's probably that's probably given us some more thoughts on how we come back as well, because furlough was going to end at the end of June. You're going to have to start making some serious decisions about your people, which isn't pleasant. Isn't pleasant for any business. But if you haven't got the volume to support them coming back, what do you do then? What they've done now by pushing it on to the end of October is great, but the end of August there's going to be an employer contribution, and we don't know what that is yet. So apparently we'll know that by the end of May. So again, body shops out there, you need to look at your people, look through your staff listing and say, okay, what do we think the volume is going to be around that time? A month before that happens in August, because you will have to make some decisions then. And if the employee contribution is 50% or 40% or whatever it's going to be, we don't know. Businesses will have to make those decisions at that point to protect themselves, because they won't be able to afford to, one, bring them back or make them redundant. So they're going to have to really look into it. And I think there's a whole HR piece there to be looked at in terms of what a business can do or what its options are when we reach that point, because that's going to be a critical point. And then September through to December is always, it's a difficult period for any business, isn't it? As you roll over December, you come back and you're paying all your suppliers and not getting the money back in quick enough. So there's going to be a real cash flow tight issue for a lot of body shops, certainly. Through that period, they're going to have to really have some help to manage their way through that part of it, and then we'll see really who's left at the end of December, end of January, I guess, is where all the pinch points are going to happen. You know, and just for body shops out there, you know, you need to really look at your business, really look at your staff, and think about these decisions you're going to have to make, which aren't going to be pleasant in lots of ways, but it's a necessity to keep the business alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rob, do you know, as part of your forecasting, are you kind of, you know, we did a survey last week. We held a sort of a meeting and got some sort of votes and feedback from across the industry. I think the general consensus was, you know, 10% of repairers are likely to go out of business, and that was kind of, you know, again, a cross sector piece, the expectation. But you know, how do you build that into your forecasting, I suppose, in terms of, you know, are there, as Dave's just suggested, are there kind of cut-off points where you think, right, that could be a significant milestone in all of this? The next one could be October, the next one could be December, in terms of disruption for the industry?
I'm saying volume a lot today, aren't I? And I'm going to say it again. It really does depend on that, doesn't it? I mean, if we find a situation where the industry contracts by more than the available volume that work providers can provide the industry, then we've got a supply and demand issue, haven't we? And that obviously will create problems on all sides. So yeah, we do monitor that position very, very closely. I expect some contraction in the industry this year, unfortunately. I do. I probably did pre-COVID, actually. You know, we've seen, what's the number, 50% less body shops today than there were 20 years ago. I think that's the number. We've seen continual contraction in this industry, unfortunately. I probably would have predicted that anyway. The answer to your question is, it depends where, and it depends on the exposure that creates for people like me. And that's obviously what we would have to manage. But that's when you can leverage on things such as relationships and strategic partnerships. That's where you work with your network to try and you know, partner with them in the absolute sense of the word, to ensure that actually where you do have volume and where you may have gaps, that actually you can plug those. So I think that's really important as well. I think, you know, identifying where there's a potential for pinch points, but also leveraging the really strong relationships that insurers like ourselves have with this network. But none of this is easy. It's not a quick answer, I'm afraid. And yeah, there could well be some contractions, unfortunate as that is, and I don't say that lightly. Absolutely not. I wish there wouldn't be. I hope there won't be. But there's probably an expectation that is going to happen. Certainly with a very deep recession around the corner, and again, I'll use that word with falling volume.
Interesting.
Oh, sorry, Kevin. Yeah.
Very much. It'd be interesting to have a look at the trend tracker report from 2007 to 2009, because obviously 2008, when we had that first recession, that might be an indication of how many body shops we lost as a result of just the recession. You know, when we're going through this COVID-19 process, we you know, are trying to plan for an exit strategy that takes us out back into what might become our new business as usual. But what we're missing, and it's a key factor, is, do those people want to come back to work? And at what time do they want to come back to work? So there's a lot about the welfare of, you know, individual employees, not just about can we and should we. You know, that's the unknown unless we start to do, you know, internally through our businesses, we start to do surveys to understand what do they want to do, how do they want to operate going forward.
Yeah, and again, referencing some of the commentary coming through the chat there, 20 to 40% of staff not keen to return to work at the moment with safety concerns. I suppose completely understandable, really, and that's, you know, that's a major challenge that any business has got to overcome at the moment, is that kind of, you know, human resource or personnel management. And, you know, again, Dave, you spoke about, you know, you kind of set out surveys, you've been speaking and liaising with your staff throughout all of this. You know, what's, I suppose, how are you approaching that side of things? Some I'm sure are only too keen to jump back into work, but others, there's going to be a kind of, you know, a reluctance perhaps.
I mean, we've with obviously we've got a big team of people. The the main ops guys, claims, finance, we're keeping in touch with on a daily basis. Once a week, we've been sending an update out on Gemini and what we're doing and what we're doing to, what's happening with the business volume wise, etc. So they've got some understanding of, are they going to be coming back to work sooner rather than later, or what's the parameters? And we've, fully shown them how we're going to manage the social distancing and protecting them, etc. Let's say perspex screens up the reception, all sorts of things we put into place, atomizers for every car, so we atomize every car as it comes in. We can do all those things, but there comes to a limit in the size of the shop that you've got, how do you fit everyone in and keep them 2 meters apart? I had the government said, you could work back to back or whatever. I've never seen two blokes fit a bonnet holding it that way round. It's just an impossibility in some areas. And also your canteen, your toilets, one person at a time. How far can you go with this really? Even, if you were doing a skeleton staff at the moment, it's tricky to do. If you've got to send 2 people out in a car to fetch a customer's car or going that, how does that work? There's so many things we've got to think about to try and make this work again. It's very, very tricky. And obviously we're all human beings. We're all people. We've all got family members we'd be cautious of not wanting to go near to at the moment, etc. And all our staff feel exactly the same. We know how they feel. We're not trying to, and we certainly wouldn't force anyone to come back. But there will be a point where you've got to come back, and those are, I think, probably, Mark Holdings put 20 to 40%. He's bang on. 60% of our staff would probably come back tomorrow, and then there'd be the 20% who are absolute adamant don't want to come back, and it may be they're at a certain age. I don't know that they don't want to, or there'll be reasons, or they got the problems at home, with other people with health. So it's that 40%. We're going to have to understand what we can do at the end of the day, because I certainly don't want to force them to come back. That'd be the last thing we want to do. But we may reach a point where we've either got to say, I'm sorry, we're going to have to make redundancies, and they may be the people, they may want that. Some people may want that. Some people might say, I've had enough. I don't want to come back to this. There will be that natural sort of swage as well. But we certainly can't force people to come back. And that's where you're modelling the body shop, how it's going to look in the future, or how we collect cars and all that side of it has really got to be thought out properly to make sure you give everyone all the PPE in the world, and that they're still not going to feel 100% safe. Some people aren't, For the government to say don't use public transport, that's enough to worry anyone not to jump on a bus. At the end of the day, it's an invisible killer. It's not like being in the war where we can say, yeah, we know what the enemy is and what it looks like, because we don't. And you don't know how fit and healthy you are. People are catching it. It's a real threat. And we can't underestimate that for business. People have got to come first. So we're just going to manage it to the best of our ability.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of and again, I'm very conscious. We're nearly sort of 2:30 already. But in terms of the kind of nitty gritty within the industry right now, what are, if you like, the most pressing concerns, challenges that we face? There's obviously been a lot of talk about kind of COVID cleansing charges. There's been a lot of debate around cash flow for body shops. There's obviously all the challenges around kind of, staff and integrating staff back into the system and making sure that it's a safe environment. But from your point of view, Dave, in terms of the business, what are the most kind of real pressing challenges that, you really need to address, within the week? Or two.
Yeah. Cash has been the main thing to keep cash of the business going round, which we've nailed. We've done it, and I have to say, government departments, HMRC, PAYE have been brilliant and very supportive. I think the government overall in supporting business have done quite a good job and worked quite well. And the furlough scheme's been brilliant to manage. So they have got some things right. Everyone in hindsight can say they didn't act quickly enough, or he should have attended the Cobra meetings, whatever. It's gone now. We can't do anything about that. It's just what we do going forward. And I wish to a degree I was in Wales with Rob, because it feels a bit safer in Wales than it does in England, but I'll be coming over there to exercise, Rob. Not
allowed in. Not allowed in. Get out.
I can speak else if I want to. We're I think the government are, doing an okay job. It's a really tricky one with balancing the economy against the people's safety. It is like that, and I think our business is like that as well. We can't stay away forever. We have got to try and come back and do. There's not that many key workers who are having bumps every day of the week that we're staying open for. I think that's a bit of a red herring. People need their cars, and the more they're asked to go back to work, they'll need them. We've got to keep coming back and keep trying to get it going again. And it may be stutter, stop again and start again, but that's what we're going to have to do. So we're just managing it day by day, volume coming in, volume coming out, keeping that balance and just keeping that maintained. As we go along, and we'll increase the targets if we need to, decrease them if we need to, bring people back off furlough, take them back on, do that seesaw effect till we find some kind of normal line, really.
Yep. And Rob, in the same sort of question to yourself, obviously we've said that volume is the ultimate key amongst all of this, but I suppose in terms of that relationship with your repair network, what are the real kind of things that you are focused on the here and now?
As much as possible, supporting in the ways that we can, and we have been, identify where there are challenges for our network operationally, and doing what we can. There are a number of ways to skin this cat, and the insurance industry has supported where it can, whether that be through increasing labour rate or reduction of parts discount or flat fees, and support for recovery costs and courtesy car and other such things. There has been some support. Now, a lot of the repairs will say it hasn't been enough. I think it's important if we are, and I congratulate this forum actually for suggesting and proposing that sort of Cobra style meeting forum to start to properly debate these issues. I think it's important that both sides hear each other out in so far as insurers haven't got infinite amounts of cash. I think Gary Barker spoke very well on this point last week, where he said that a lot of the benefit is actually going to be competed away, and actually the expectation of the regulator on insurers is that any benefit is passed on to the customer. That said, the insurer cannot and should not ever forget about its supply chain, because frankly, without its supply chain, it's nothing. So there has to be a level of support, and that is something that obviously clearly we would need to debate. I think inefficiencies, and I think sort of frictional processes is also really important. They're the sorts of things I think we can really get into and start to discuss, cross-industry. And I think that they are areas. I think some of the COVID practicalities that Dave touched on that are going to be ongoing post-lockdown. How do you send drivers out to do a collection? Things like that are just, I think at the moment, we know are a problem for us, but actually at some point as an industry, we're going to have to bottom out and resolve. So I think it's areas like that actually we can home in on. Cleaning costs, how long do they last? They don't magically end as soon as we're out of lockdown. They'll probably magically end once we hit 99% immunity and have a vaccine. So they're the sorts of things that I think, in a grown-up way, that actually we should start to engage and just have a discussion about. What the forum is not going to do is achieve some form of standardized commercial terms or anything like that. It's never going to achieve those sorts of things. I'll tell you now, manage people's expectations. Insurers are not going to go for that. But I think insurers are absolutely up for, I don't speak for the industry, but I speak for one, are willing to engage in terms of looking at some of that practical level detail, and certainly some of the inefficiencies that might exist.
Well, that's great to hear from you there, Rob, and yeah, absolutely. The sort of the Cobra idea is sort of gathering momentum. So yeah, absolutely. Anyone who wants to express an interest in that, then please just drop me an email, and obviously you guys will be included, or at least circled in terms of the activity there. Now, Kevin, I'm just picking up. Mark Bull's been on 2008 to 2018, approximately 20% less body shops. So That was kind of in reference to the survey piece. Yeah, any surprise there, kind of thing, or?
I think we're still in a period of uncertainty. At least when we knew the credit crisis was coming, we could predict for it. COVID came in as an unpredicted phenomenon. But what we've got to take into consideration is this is only the start of a very, very, very long journey. We've got, you know, all of this peer pressure, we've got all of this uncertainty around will we ever get a vaccine, and then coupled with it's great to see the government supporting our industry and the UK businesses, but at some point we've got to pay this money back. So, you know, going into financial decline is inevitable. It's how we come out of the other side. The one thing I want to sort of make sure that everybody focuses on is let's not continue to be beaten down by this process, this challenge. Let's look for the cup half full process, and let's take some of the positives out of the situation. You know, we spoke about efficiencies today. Sadly, the body shop industry does have inefficiencies, and that shouldn't be bolstered up by asking for more rate. What we should do is take this opportunity to look inwards within our businesses and look to see where we can gain better efficiencies. And I think that will then give us the collaboration between insurers, work providers and supply chain members. And I think hopefully the COVID group that we're talking about, those are the things that I think should become transparent and shared. Where are the cost points within each other's business? And then let's talk about how we share that cost, how we reduce that cost, and then it becomes much more collaborative.
Brilliant points. Again, all round, you know, that's excellent conversation there again today. We are 2:30, believe it or not, so it's been a whirlwind. But thank you guys very much, Dave, Rob, and Kevin, for your participation today. I know it's been truly valued. Lots of comments coming through, and again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. You know, we will keep you posted on all of this. We're going to keep the conversation going on a week-by-week basis as well. So thank you very much indeed for your time today. Been really kind of, you know, insightful and positive as well. And it's great to feel that, you know, we're kind of beginning to really collaborate and think about those kind of things as an industry as a whole, so the entire supply chain. So great to hear from everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. Take care all. See you.